Welcome, everyone. Welcome to your afternoon at JDD. This is my first time at JDD and first time in Krakow. Excited to be here. Seems like we got a really nice crowd and people really engaged into the Java development world. So with Oracle, today we're going to be talking about Agile architecture. And just a quick poll here: who's been doing some kind of Agile development and familiar with Java Agile concepts? Cool. And any folks that deal with architectural problems at a daily basis or somewhat frequently? Okay, cool. All right. So I think this is not so much depending on the fact that you're using Agile today. You can do the whole point of this is really borrowing some of the Agile principles, the incremental nature of things, and applying to your architecture. So one final question here. So who knows and who has an architecture roadmap as part of your system? All right, a few folks. Nice. Kind of interested in how you're tracking that and kind of having a conversation here. So feel free to ask questions anytime. Basically, this is really something that we've been doing, and it's working for us. We kind of had to figure something out to solve that problem internally, and that's kind of what we're trying to share here. So, I have a clicker. So this is our legal. Legal asked me to put that in. What we're talking today here is my ideas and not necessarily represent the ideas of my employer. And I'm a Java guy. I've been doing Java for about 15 years. And I'm really a software engineer that kind of have the opportunity now to have a broad picture of the system I work in. So kind of focused mostly on kind of a the web service side of things, kind of the back integrations with other systems, third parties, and things like that. And I'm really happy with what I do, and I'm glad I kind of took this path on the Java world. So I'm currently with the Taleo group within Oracle. We joined Taleo in 2010, and about 1.5 years ago, Taleo was acquired by Oracle as part of the Oracle Cloud expansions strategy. And at Oracle, at Taleo, we have two main products. We have our enterprise product, and we have a small, medium business. And I'm the lead architect for the small, medium business product. So kind of the key aspects of it is really the direction, not the today, the tomorrow, and the after. It's kind of more the after tomorrow of where the product is going and where do we want to take this platform. All right, so a little bit more about me. Who can guess where I'm based from based on this logo? I want to see kind of get an idea. Any show of hands? Anyone? Florida, yes, you got it. This would be the second hint. I think this is a little more. This is the Florida Gators, University of Florida, go Gators. Okay, maybe not. And the Miami Heat. So based in Florida, we have just a couple guys from our team in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida. And most of our teams are in Pleasanton, California, where most of my travel happens to be too. And we also have a Krakow team. And basically kind of in between the two, at the Eastern time there, US, I have some more overlap in terms of hours with the European time, and so I kind of do that bridging between our Krakow team and the California team. We also have a team in Quebec City, so most of our enterprise guys are up there, and they are also some of the stakeholders as part of our development. Okay, so why am I doing this talk here in Krakow? And this is one of the reasons I'm doing this talk here, yes. One good reason, but not so much. I want to start the conversation. This is not the first time I'm kind of dealing with this problem of iterating through, incrementally building and expanding the product, and not necessarily working towards managing complexity. So as we're going to talk about here, be able to report not only internally with my colleagues, but also report to my managers and directors where we're going in the application. So having that visibility, it's something that's really important. It was a struggle for us because I had pressure from different parts of the company to move towards of where they wanted to go. So this is kind of what the problem where things started. So this is me. I joined Oracle, and my director comes to me and say, Pablo, take it. It's your baby. It's on your hands now, and but don't screw it up. So basically, at that point, then my esteemed VP of engineering, he would just come, oh, so this is the new guy? By the way, I have this list for you, asks here, and if you don't do it, I'm going to go through your director too and make you do it. So he's actually sitting here and giving me a really strange look right now, so it's working. So I also, at a point, I'm kind of interacting directly with my managers on North America and Krakow. And they come into me would say, Pablo, we have these stories, these functionality asks, and I need you help in terms of how do we build that in the application? Not everything, but some of the more kind of major features, how do we kind of continue growing the kind of architecture side of things? So those are also folks that kind of having asks. Then I have product management, which might be one of my main kind of stakeholders at this. Product management, they come up with the next few quarters of features and asks. And then I need to be aware of that to prepare the platform to support the stories they're bringing in. I also deal with my systems guys. So systems, they change their VMs, they change the platform, and the application and how it interacts with the system needs to have changes for that. So I kind of need to account for that. And I have my corporate standards too. As part of Oracle, we have security standards, we have translations and localizations and accessibility, and all those things that I need to bake in that are also pulling my attention to. And I have QA support with production bugs that are non-easily fixable and that we need a solution for them. And at the same time, I'm doing code reviews. I'm experimenting with new technology. This is the stuff I want to do, spend my time with. Define the future vision. So where is the application going? This is actually one of my goals and one of my mandates. And I want to fix those hairy prod bugs that they're always around. And I write code. So at the end of the day, I'm kind of responsible for things, but I'm still with the team. I'm still writing code and still being a Java guy. So the key takeaway of this is really kind of some of these takes. Everyone in that list there, in black, they want to stay. They wanted the priority in that they're pulling from different directions and they want their things done. And basically, we just have to have alignment there. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. So what I need to, I've been asked questions. So since I joined, I've been asked questions such as, what are the biggest issues in the app right now? And I would be, kind of depend to who you ask. Some people kind of understand that depending how those issues are hurting them, they basically have different opinions on that. What are you doing in regards to architecture in the next fiscal year? Well, that's kind of a good question. What is this made investment in tools and technology? What do we want to do and how much we're going to spend on that? Because I need to tell my director and my GMs what is the investment. And why haven't we started this project yet? I mean, this has been sitting there for a while. It's like, and my answer is, let me get back to you on that. So I finally am able to do that. And the solution is really defining an architecture for the team. So this is really a pathway, a list of things that are prioritized. And some of these stakeholders that we talked about might not like that priority. But basically, we need to agree in a priority, right? And at some point, someone needs to make a call and say that A is more important than B, and B is more important than C, and whatever is the order. But then that roadmap needs to be prioritized, needs to be mutable. I need to be able to stick something ahead of something else as things come up, because they do come up. It's visible and agreed upon all stakeholders. So this is the key takeaway. I don't want to have people coming to me and asking, Pablo, when we're going to start this? I mean, and in Agile, this is as part of we are an Agile shop, so it's really kind of difficult to plan way too ahead. Because I mean, my product is not really thinking in the 1 or 2 years ahead. It's really thinking the next release or two. So that's kind of one thing that I want to make sure from an architecture perspective, and integrate it with our development process. I want to be able to get this roadmap and fit with my product roadmap, ideally if I can. And again, execute incrementally. So these are my requirements in terms of how do I want to document things and make my life hopefully easier. So the outcome was something that created the alignment between all the stakeholders, and that really kind of allowed, and this is what I'm going to talk about here. So that I'm not sure how many rules of Agile I'm going to be breaking here. The Scrum masters in the room, I might not be kind of bending the rules of Scrum a little bit. I'm also talking about a different approach for Agile, which is the disciplined Agile delivery, and let's go from there. So, getting into some of the more details now, the quick agenda is how traditional software architecture has been done, and how is that a struggle for us? What is how do you deal with architecture in Agile process? The fact that Scrum doesn't really tell you much what to do and how to do it, and we'll talk about our architecture roadmap and have questions. So, all right, let's move on. So, software architecture. So the IEEE, which is the guideline for software architecture, this is like one of many definitions I found online. Is, it talks about the fundamental organization of a system, right? It talks about components, the environment, and the relationships between these things. So I think at the end of the day, people have different opinions of what architecture is, but it's really is that components, that we have different components in your system, different pieces of, could be code, could be a class, could be an actual application, and how do you interact with each other. And that's kind of the key takeaway here. So this is not meant for you guys to read and understand, but this is the meta diagram for software architecture. But I guess my point of having this slide here is really show that an architecture diagram really kind of shows relationships, nodes and relationships, and that kind of the type of thing. And the problem is that software is growing at an amazing pace. And the lines of code it's estimated to double now every 2 years, the total lines of codes in the world. So things are growing, new components are being deployed, new components are interacting with other components in another way, and the traditional way of doing architectural work up front no longer, has probably never worked well, but it's even more of a problem, right? And with folks, whenever they got your PRDs and your big definition documents and you had a chance to say, let's take a look at this, and what do we need to do from an architecture perspective? Things are not like that anymore. More and more of us from what I see here are doing Agile, and you get things in more bits, in smaller pieces, and kind of spread out throughout different iterations. And so the architecture work cannot be just left alone just to happen by itself. So the Lemon's laws of software evolution from 1980 tells us that as the system evolves, the complexity increases unless work is done to maintain or reduce it. So that kind of tells you what. So as things are growing, things are just get more and more complex, and I think that's a given. So for the most part, and this is probably simplifying things quite a bit, the amount of architectural work that's usually needed and required, it's really, at the beginning, you don't have anything. You need to set up your foundation, your architecture, your framework. So there's a lot of architectural work that goes in there. As time goes on, that kind of slows down, and every so often you do a major feature that you need to kind of revisit things and do a little bit more work. And every so often you need to do some sort of a rewrite of some part of your system. And that's kind of a consequence of the fact that as the system grows, unless you're really paying your duties there, and it was called the system hygiene, right? You need to kind of be constantly revisiting that. So that's really something that kind of resonates in terms of, okay, well, that iterative and incremental aspect goes really well with Agile, but for the most part, Agile is really just focusing on the product and the user stories and the value and the business value. So I saw this whiteboard drawing, and I thought it was perfect for what I'm talking about here. So traditionally, the architects are not really close to the code. They're thinking about things, they're aware of the business asks and the business needs, but they don't really know how the code is today. They're not close to the developers. The architectural documents done 2 years ago, they have nothing to do what the code looks today, right? And that's part of the idea. Time and time again, from different systems that are interacted with, that is the case. The architect does need that broad view and needs to think from that perspective, but it doesn't have to be on that ivory tower there all the time. So it could be something that, for the most part, you just need to go up every once in a while if you want to use that metaphor. But then he does have poor visibility on the developer and the work that is done in the ground level, and the opposite is too. So the developer's like, what is this guy thinking about? This is I mean, these documents really don't jive with where we are in terms of the application. So it is a problem. I mean, there's just so much you can do from just a conceptual perspective. So if you're not aware of the actual details of the code, you kind of miss some of the things that can be gained from that. So can we do it? Can we do this a little bit differently, right? So I think we can. I think the idea is that we can still do as much work as we can from pre-work. And kind of I think I'm not saying that always delay your architecture decisions, but if you can, you probably not a bad idea. Because there's always things that are changing underneath that you want to take advantage of making that decision later if you can. So just quick intro here in Scrum. So why in Agile and Scrum specifically, since it's the most popular, why does Agile kind of make sense to this? So Agile is really, you think about new development, new features from a product perspective, from business value. And you do that planning, you do your sprint planning, and then you iterate through that. So every 2 or 4 or 6 weeks, whatever is your iteration, you building functionality, you growing the system, and you have the ability to kind of revisit what's next, right? So it's the feedback loop there is pretty short. And everything is pretty clearly prioritized. So my product manager comes to me and they say, okay, this is my list. And it's like, great. And then everything is already in the order that has the most impact from a strategy and from user value for that customer. And I think, oh, by the way, I have a few architecture items that I want to put in there. So I'm just going to put that in your list, and we're going to fit it somewhere. The problem is that those things don't fit together. The architectural work that is needed doesn't necessarily have any business value. If I have an architecture, the way I'm using here is really anything that is not user related or doesn't really have an impact for my product guys. See, if it looks like I have a story to say, let's clean up our logs because our production logs are getting out of control. And whenever that happens, he looks at us like, how is that spending calories on this is more important than getting this feature out? And it's a good question. It's a fair question. But then how do we deal with that? So just using this Agile as an example, I looked at that and I said, well, the Agile kind of defines these product roadmaps, right? So on the left there, you have your product roadmap. Well, those are all the user-related features that you're going to be working on. And they're picked from, they created stories out of those epics, and you start iterating through it. And the paradigm here is that Scrum really tells you to say, okay, if you need an architecture work as part of those stories, that's when they're done. But they're really triggered by that, and that's not always the case. We have a problem here. So when you wake up and you brush your teeth in the morning, right? Why do you do that? I mean, I don't think you wake up eager to like, oh man, it's time to brush my teeth and kind of get the nice clean feeling. It's really more of an impact because you just have to do it, right? I mean, most people agree with that, hopefully. But then this girl, she doesn't look too happy about it, and I think that's part of the deal, right? There's some things as you use your mouth, as you go throughout the day and you eat and you do, the things you do. I mean, there is just decay and remains of things and that's kind of what happens in their system too. As we're using the system, as the users are hitting the system and your load goes up, and as you grow your system and you have tight deadlines that your developers take shortcuts, as you have new developers that don't fully understand the system and how things are put together, you start incurring this debt, and those are the things that don't necessarily map the work that you need to do to control to control complexity that is not going to be triggered from your user stories. And we want to get a handle of that. So that's kind of a key point there. So how do we track these things? So again, the Scrum only talks about doing the work that you need to do as part of the stories that are created. But no, I don't buy that. There's things that are triggered by user stories, but I think there aren't. And it's difficult to prioritize one thing against the other. So yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of bugs today that our product just look at it and say, yeah, I don't care about fixing this bug because it's really not affecting a user. It is. I mean, it will but until it is a big impact for them, there are other things that they want to spend their calories on. But from a technical perspective, I'd much rather, this is much cheaper for me to fix it now than pushing out for later. All right, so where do we draw that line, right? How do we define how much we push these things off and how much we say, hey guys, we have a capacity here. How can we split this a little bit better? So the idea here, and this is introduced by the discipline Agile Delivery, and I encourage you guys to kind of look that up. It's not as wildly kind of known and used as like Scrum, but basically kind of defines that a new guy here in the team is the architecture owner. So before you had your Scrum Master, your product owner in your team, and now we also have this architecture owner. And he has a stake in that Agile development. He's part of the team, and he's there in the trenches with the developers. He's no longer in some other room or in some other location sending documents over, reading requirements and sending some documents over. So he's participating with the Agile process. And there's a huge benefit of doing that. And it's basically participating and injecting what is important to that person, to that stakeholder, as part of the Agile development. So this is an example of how, and this is using Jira, how my roadmap is kind of organized. And this is kind of a fictitious product here that I created some stories for. I created some epics, and it's really creating my list, my prioritized list. So product, you have your product backlog, sweet. I have my architecture backlog, and let's work together, right? Let's build a trust and kind of work those together. So how do I did that? So I started off and I say, okay, what do I build as part of my system? Where do I want my system to go? So I forced myself to have the look ahead, the 2-3 years, 3-5 years, or whatever is your time range there, to say, okay, where do I want my system to go? I want to be able to run an Oracle database versus something else. I want to be able to use WebLogic versus something else. I want to be able to, there's some of these things that are not going to be, products not going to come to me with those, but I need to kind of think ahead of schedule because it's a strategic move that I need to think about. And this doesn't have to be set in stone. I can change the next month whenever my Steam VP comes to me and say, hey, by the way, we have a new priority that you need to get it done. And so I need to be able to quickly respond to some of these things. And it can also include my bugs. So if I have any hairy bugs or anything that needs to take calories from my capacity, then I'm going to fit everything in one big list. And that list is what I just point to people to whenever they come with initial questions. I say, how long things are going to take, why this project hasn't been done yet. And I feel much better having that in my pocket than trying to respond and make things work for different folks without having the coordination among them. So basically, at the end of the day, I mean, everyone, liking it or not, they agree. That's my list and that's my priority. Until someone else has a better reason to change the order of things of my roadmap, then that's the roadmap. So that kind of creates a lot of visibility, eases tension, and prepares people for things that they might like or might not like. So the method there is really kind of borrowing some of those Agile principles. And my epics describes my major initiatives, right? So we have a few key epics here. I want to switch all my database IDs to UU IDs, right? That's one big thing that is going to change a bunch of stuff on my core. And again, product doesn't care about. So there's a number of things. So I describe these things, and that's what I show to my manager. That's what I show to my director. And those are the things that they can understand. Well, sort of. I mean, sometimes they can't, but it's easier for them to understand. So that's a really kind of a high-level perspective, work that needs to be done and will be done, and a spirit that, I mean, that's how we kind of communicate out of the organization. So then I go one level deeper, and that's my stories. And my stories, so what are the things I need to do? What are the stories that made together? If I complete all these stories, they're going to actually fulfill that epic. And then I just sprint through them, and that's kind of how I get there. But the one problem still remains, which is how do I prioritize these things and fit into my process, right? So I prioritize that. I mean, there's, again, different ways of taking this, but you look at the ROI, how much would it be better for me to do this versus later? What are the risks of doing this now versus later? And is that part of my long-term vision? And that's something that I understand that. I don't understand the product priorities, but I understand that means something to me. And is that aligned to my business goals, right? I understand and I have my goals from a long-term perspective, and yes, I want to focus based on that. And again, everyone has visibility to that, and if you don't like, let's have a conversation and decide why that should not be the case. So, from a team allocation perspective, then we get to a point, right? So today I have 3 teams, 3 Agile teams, and together we can do 100 points per release, right? That's my team capacity. That's how much I can do things. And whenever I do this, and I say, basically, your product owner will get 80 points, your architecture guy, or architecture owner, is going to get 20 points. Yeah, I wish it was a more of 50-50 there, but I'll take those 20 points because at the end of the day, I mean, we want to grow the system, but I still have the capacity that is dedicated to me. So the 80 points come out of my product roadmap, 20 points come out of architecture roadmap as part of that release. So at that point, whenever you get that agreement from products, but basically product giving away 20 points. But when product understands that there is the system hygiene, right, that the work that needs to be done, otherwise they will pay later, then this kind of becomes a simpler exercise. Tuning that might change over time, right? We're having performance issues, we're having problems. Let's make that bump up that architecture capacity a little bit. And then we can do that and respond to that on every release basis. So how do you fit that? I mean, assuming you use Agile, and how do you fit that? You can create a separate team just to do your architecture work. So you have a separate sprint planning, you have your separate sprint kind of a scrum and so forth. You can track the velocity of those stories separately. And you can actually have a dedicated team if you can, or you can share team members from your product sprints. And that, I don't know if I mean, you can make that work, but I mean, at that point, your team members, if they're shared, they kind of committed to 2 different sprints, committed to 2 different committed to different sprints. So how do you share the time? How do you deal with delays and things like that? The second option is really what I like the most, and what we're doing is really a combined sprint that basically, with architecture owner, product owner, we put the stories together, and whenever the team commits, the team is committing to your product and your architecture stories. So that's kind of the gist of it. And part of the deal is the story grooming. If you're familiar with that, and from the Scrum process, the story grooming, preparing your stories. They now not only driven by your product owner, but they're driven by both together, the product and the architecture owner. So I'm going to switch gears here quick and show that the way we set that up and the way we use in our application using Jira. And hopefully we're still logged in here. So, all right. So this is, we use Jira for our bug tracking, for our Agile tracking. So that's the green hopper is the plugin for Jira that makes Jira Agile. So this is my board. As an architect, right, as the architecture owner, this is my board. I come in here, and I look at my backlog, and I see all the next things that I have. On the left there, you actually have my epics. Those are the major features that I'm worried about in this application. By the way, this is an application that it's like a Expedia.com, like a flight and a hotel registration, hotels.com type thing. So from an architecture perspective, I want to do universal IDs, SSO, hard deletes, and dependency injections. That's what I want to build in my system. Those are the stories to create them. I have 3 sprint teams, and I can see that each one has 2 of my stories going on. So I can expand those and see all the work that is going on in regards only to architecture. So this is my board. This is what I bring to my story grooming, and that's how I use to do sprint planning. I also, my director, right, he wants to see how the release is going, how the whole thing is going. So he looks at the overall backlog, and it's slightly different, right? It does include everything that we have in our map. So you see more epics here on the left. I have a flight reservation, I have hotel reservations that are really user-driven, and along with my architecture initiatives. And the teams here, you can see that it's a mix and match of those, of product and architecture. So whenever the product folks are building their sprints and creating their priorities, they don't see my stories either. So it kind of becomes separate. It only comes together at the time of the sprint planning. After the sprint starts, then everything kind of works combined because the team is already agreed to that combined initiative. Get my updates available there. I can also see, I guess the tool this is more of a tool feature. It kind of shows me in my sprints what is the progress of things. And again, those are fictitious stories. That's why they're all assigned to me. But this is kind of where across the board, all the work is being done, where we're in progress, what is done. And again, I can filter it down to only see my architecture ideas. So I feel very good about this in terms of seeing what is being done towards the application. I know that progress is being made. I know that investment is being made. I can also create dashboards that I can show my peers what is the work that is being done, how many stories from an architecture perspective, what is the investment on the platform, right? Because the product already have that. But now I can say, I mean, how many bugs or stories or things were done towards making the system more reliable. Okay, basically paying back a little bit of the debt that is included as part of growing that system to what product wants. So this is visible to everyone. Everyone can look at my dashboard. Everyone can see what are my priorities. And that really triggers a lot of conversations and set a lot of expectations in terms of, when things are going to be done, with the bandwidth that we have. I mean, if anyone has a problem, let's try to bump up my bucket size from 20 to 40 to whatever it is, and we'll get things done more quickly. All right, moving on. Some challenges here, right? So the problem is it's getting that alignment with everyone is kind of really the kind of key takeaway here. And it's something that we still struggle, and it's not easy. It's really getting that trust that when I come and ask for more bandwidth to doing architecture work, product understands, having that conversation, because we're at the same level of asks in terms of application. At the end of the day, the product has a bigger saying because they're the ones that pay the bills. People are signing up not because we have an awesome architecture. People are signing up because they have the features that they need. So kind of finding the perfect split of how much you want to invest on paying your hygiene costs and doing the product work is one thing. And that's what we kind of need to keep working on, So that relationship does change over time as your system becomes more stable or there's less of major features happening in. Probably your architecture work can kind of go down quite a bit. So you can just track that on the side, but it's really never the case. So I think a key takeaway is that team trust, right? The ability to have people working together. We no longer have the architect in the ivory tower. It really becomes a technical lead, right? A technical lead, a senior developer, a guy that is most familiar with the system, that it's in the hook for being the architecture owner, for thinking a little bit of their time ahead of schedule, ahead of the next few releases, and making that voice clear to the rest of the organization why we need to think about tomorrow today. And I think that's a key. It's a thing that Agile doesn't emphasize as much as it should. And I think this kind of helps address that a little bit. All right. In terms of kind of what are kind of some takeaways here is that the communication of the vision, right? Right now, before we didn't have a vision for the product. Before we were responding to product asks. And now we have this opportunity to say, okay, this is where we want to go. It doesn't matter if it's the final or how much is going to change, but then this is this is our path. Right now, that's our path, and that kind of communicates. And Agile doesn't lead you to think that way. You're talking about more iterative, more incremental, and that's kind of part of the deal. So this kind of forces you to think a little bit ahead of schedule, and I think that's a good thing. Not that you're going to hash everything out at that point, but it's good to keep thinking about that. And it gives you metrics, right? When people come to me and they say, okay, what do we need in terms of licenses for the next fiscal year? And what are the things that we want to prepare and train our folks to be able to do, new tools, new technologies, and uptake new Oracle products? I have a better take on that, even though it might change. And it probably will. I still have something that I can base on and say, okay, based on today, this is my answer. I don't know about tomorrow, but then it's better than not having a response. So I have my prioritized list, and that's my Bible. That's what I go for until someone gives me a reason that that's not the way to go. And it's a great way to communicate. So a lot of times people ask me those questions. I was like, okay, just look at my dashboard. Look at my product roadmap, and you see when I get a new request, okay, we need to actually do this work and say, okay, just go in there, tell me more or less where you think we can fit that, because whatever we fit that, something else behind it's going to be pushed out. And it just makes that conversation a little bit easier. Buy versus build, basically, I mean, if we look at something that is way too far out and we need to kind of respond to it, is that better than, can we justify prioritizing it higher, or can we have opportunity to buy something that is ready to go and we can gain that from a strategic perspective, right? So those are the things that at the development level, you're really not thinking that, but this is really stepping backwards, kind of taking a kind of bigger picture of things and try to respond to some of these things. And that's the stuff you can answer and gather from your own team, right? I mean, these are not only coming from the architecture leader. I mean, I have folks that actually inject their own stories, their own things on the roadmap, and I just do the exercise of actually prioritizing those. All right. Some future reading here. I do encourage everyone. I think that Scott Ambler does a great job kind of introducing these new ways. So this is the DAD, the discipline agile delivery, DAD for short. It does react to some of the key things of doing agile in really large organizations. And I don't think everything that needs to be done there gets a little heavy, which kind of Scrum is already a little bit heavy already. But I think there are a lot of good things to kind of pick from in terms of ideas kind of handling parallel agile teams, as if you have multiple agile teams going on even different parts of the organization, right? So the folks from my cloud ops can be doing agile, I'm doing agile, and how do we kind of align things? They have some solutions for that. So you guys are kind of in bigger organizations. This kind of makes a lot of sense to kind of think on some of those perspectives. So that website at the bottom there, they actually have, I mean, before you get the book, if you're interested, just check out the site, and they have some good information to kind of get you started and understand what are some of the values there. And yep, I think this is it for me. Hopefully, I mean, this kind of enlightening you guys to kind of think a little bit more far out and be able to kind of communicate and fit that into your agile process. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes for questions if you guys have questions. Yep.
1 second, I will give you mic.
So you put things like tasks you want to do, the big epics on the Jira dashboard. But what with the things like, I don't know, reviewing the dependencies of in the code or doing code reviews? Those flossing things, do you also put them out there somewhere, or you just keep and do it in some spare time or so-called meantime?
Yep, no, that makes a lot of sense. As part of our product stories, we have some task templates. So every time we create a user story, we create a number of tasks that every story needs to adhere to. So we have perform code reviews, push to QA development, QA database, whatever. I mean, we have this little thing that for every new work, that's going to be done as part of the user story. And that's a cost incurred in the product side of things. But yeah, so if we have some old codes or old packages that need to be revisited, anyone can just open an enhancement request or a story to kind of revisit that. And then we can kind of prioritize, and you know, if it's a low-hanging fruit, it's easy to kind of push through and kind of get it done. So it would be part of that if it's not net new code. So.
Hi. So are you participating in other activities like in Scrum you have the stand-up meeting, sprint planning, retrospection, and so on. So to what extent your role differ to product owner?
Yeah, I participate in all the product, the story grooming stories, the story grooming meetings. So every time we're talking about stories and estimating them, I'm there. So I kind of try to help to whenever all the product stories, all the architecture related things are brought up, and we kind of estimate accordingly. And then I bring my own stories to those. So that's a yes for those. The sprint planning ones, at that point, my story is already committed. I mean, my top list is already committed. I have a number of points. After we estimate that, I just pick those number of points and I give it to my sprint planning. So I might be there, I might not be there. And then the Scrum one is the same thing. The thing is we have 3 different teams, so it's difficult to kind of join all those Scrums. And but as needed, people kind of say, Pablo, we have a question on this. We have a blocker on this. Can you come and join? It's more of an as needed feature. So. Other questions?
Well, if not, thank you very much for your lecture, and see you after 20 minutes break.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.